Alright guys, welcome back to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. I am Ryan, and I am using my real name in this video because this video is going to be a little bit more real than my usual ones. And I apologize in advance if this is kind of weird or just not really what you come to your YouTube Let's Plays for, but this is going to be kind of a dedication video to my grandfather, guys. My Poppop, who passed away about 2 days ago as I record this. You already knew that if you followed me on Twitter, and I wanted to say thanks to you people who sent me, replies and personal messages, just sending your condolences and your thoughts and whatnot. Really do appreciate it. It really does help, and it means a lot to me. Thank you guys. My Pop-Pop loved The Legend of Zelda, guys, and I've kind of been struggling with how I wanted to approach this next video because I knew this was going to be difficult for me. Just playing Zelda just always reminds me of him. But, the thing is, guys, he was 82 years old, and his passing wasn't 100% unexpected. His health had been going down for quite a while, and honestly, I'm just happy that he's not in pain anymore because the last couple months of his life were pretty difficult. And I'm going to try to celebrate his life rather than mourn his death. And I think that just kind of talking about him while I'm playing this game is kind of the best way I have to do that. It's kind of the best way I have to honor him right now. So hopefully you understand. And we're probably honestly not going to accomplish much in this video in terms of the game. I'm really just probably going to run around and probably just try and cover some land that we haven't covered before. I'm not really going to fight anything. If we find a shrine or two, that'll be great. But I'm probably not going to actually do it. I'm just going to try and just talk. And kind of let you guys know about the kind of guy that my Pop-Pop was and why he meant so much to me. Not even sure where to start. I think I've told some of these stories before during this Let's Play. And I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but I'm just gonna try and kind of bring it all together into one video here. When I was a kid, guys, my dad left the family pretty early. I'm not even sure how old I was. I want to say I was maybe 6 or 7, somewhere around that area. And he wasn't in the picture very often after that. My mom ended up being a single mom with 3 children, which obviously was extremely difficult. I was the middle child, FYI. My little brother was just a baby, and my older sister was 4 years older than me. And one of the ways that my mom kind of relieved stress was that every night she would, not every night, every Friday night, she would go to bingo with my grandma. I call her Nana. So they were my Nana and my Pop-Pop. And Nana loved bingo. So every Friday night, Mom would take Nana and they would go play bingo. And I don't really know what my sister did on those nights, to be honest with you. But my little brother was being babysat by somebody. And I guess my sister would just go and do her own thing. Maybe she went to bingo with them, or maybe she just went and did, like, teenager stuff or whatever the hell she was doing back then. I have no idea. But my Pop-Pop would come and pick me up. And we started our own routine, our own little tradition that we would do on Friday nights. Right after school, my Pop-Pop would come get me, and the first thing we would do is we would go to Hardee's and have dinner, because Hardee's was my Pop-Pop's favorite fast food chain, at least back then. And it was like his once-a-week treat kind of thing for himself. Some of you may know Hardee's as Carl Jr.'s. I think that's what they're called in certain parts of the country. But yeah, same place. And we would go there and we would talk. We would have some burgers, have some shakes, just kind of hang out. And it became a tradition that I really, really loved. I always look forward to Friday nights going to Hardee's with Pop-Pop. It was a thing we did for a long time. And it was great. But that was only the start of our Friday night tradition. Once we left Hardee's, we would be coming back home to Pop-Pop's house. And is that... That's one I've already done, right? That's got to be that guy right there. Yeah, we're looking for orange. I know this is a lot of area I haven't explored before, so I'm hoping I'll run into one out here. But if we don't, that's okay. But on our way home from Hardee's, we would always stop at some kind of gas station or a place that sold lottery tickets because Poppop loved the lottery. And when I say that, I'm talking about like the state lottery with actual lottery tickets and also scratch-off tickets. It was just one of his favorite things to do. So we would always stop at some kind of gas station and we would buy a bunch of scratch-off tickets. And the funny thing is that we never really walked away with anything because even in the event that we won, you know, $1, $5, $20, whatever we got, Poppop would just take that money and he would go inside and buy more lottery tickets with it. Because honestly, I think the act of just scratching them off and seeing if you won anything was sort of like more fun to him than actually winning. So we very rarely walked away with more than we actually went in with, which was kind of funny in retrospect. I do remember one time when I was scratching off some of the lottery tickets that he had given me to scratch off, and we actually won $300 on one. I don't remember what the name of the ticket was, like what kind of ticket it was. I do remember that it was like red and had like a chef on it, and I think the parts we were scratching off were like pretzels or something. It was a red pretzel lottery ticket. I don't know. But I remember that, like, to me, that was one of the most exciting things that had ever happened at the time, because I was like, oh my god, Poppop, this is $300. Do you have any idea how rich we are now? Because I was a little kid, and $300 was like the largest amount of money I had ever conceived of. And of course, to him, it wasn't that big a deal. You know, that $300 is cool, but like to an adult, it's just like, well, this isn't going to change the course of my life, but it's cool. Yeah, I think that was one of the most exciting things that had ever happened to me at that time. In retrospect, that's kind of funny. But, you know, once we were done with lottery tickets and whatnot, we would come back home to Poppop's house. Oh, we have a Korok here, don't we? Nice. And once we got home, we had... Oh my god, I did find one, guys. Check that out. I should go hit that up. We would probably have, like, I don't know, a half hour, 45 minutes to 1 hour, somewhere, some amount of time before the lottery numbers would be on the television, which Poppop had to watch every single day because he always played the lottery and he wanted to know if he won or not. And during that time, he would sit in his lazy boy and just kind of watch TV or do whatever. And I would usually go outside and I would practice baseball because I was a huge baseball kid. I'm not sure if I've ever really talked about that with you guys, but I wanted to be a pro ball player for a long time, and obviously that didn't work out for a number of reasons. But, you know, Friday nights we would get back home, and we had a really nice setup, actually, behind the house, behind Poppop's house. So we had the asphalt driveway, and then as part of the same asphalt, there was like a path leading around the side of the house, and it would lead back to kind of like another driveway behind the house. And the driveway in the back was right up against the house, and the side of the house was made of brick. So, using a rubber baseball, it was actually a really good place to practice if you were by yourself. So I would pop back there, and I would practice by myself for a little while. And the reason I bring that up, guys, is because it kind of reminds me of this one story that involved Poppop. He never really minded the fact that I would go back there and use the side of the house to practice. Even though it was noisy, I'm sure it must have been annoying as all hell to anybody inside that house, because it was just like thwack, thwack, thwack. I was just hitting the house over and over again. But he never complained about it until the one day when I messed up and I threw the ball a little too high, and I ended up breaking Poppop's bedroom window, because his bedroom window was right there on the second story on the side of the house. And, you know what? He must have been really upset about it, but he didn't really let on about that. Like, I would have been upset. But he was always really good at controlling his temper. Even when he was pissed off about something, he would just kind of be, you know, quiet and stern about it. He had his little outbursts every now and then, of course. If he lost his temper, he might snap. You know, he might like throw a really brief shit fit, but he kept himself in control mostly. He never really yelled at us kids in anger. You know, he certainly never struck us or anything like that. He was a kind old man. And the way he handled that was basically, he said, okay, well, you broke the window, and you are going to have to take responsibility for it. He ended up charging me about, I think it was $45 total, which now as an adult I know, the window must have been way more expensive than that to replace. But he decided that $45 was what I owed, and he allowed me to pay that back by working, doing chores around his house on the weekend. And I'm pretty sure I earned like $5 per weekend chore. So I was doing chores over the weekend for like 8 or 9 weeks straight before he called it square. And again, like, I know that it must have cost him way more than that to actually fix the window, but that was what he decided to charge me. So that was the kind of guy he was. Very fair. Very fair. Wanted me to just kind of learn a lesson from that about taking responsibility for the things you do, even if it was an accident. You know, it wasn't really about punishing me. It was just about being fair and making it right. But anyway, once the lottery was over and Poppop had his lottery numbers, I would come inside and we would sit down and we would play some video games. Poppop was honestly a pretty big gamer, guys. Not in the sense that he played everything and had all the stuff, but he really loved a handful of video games. He's the one who started me off as a gamer, you know? He had an Intellivision, and he loved to play Burger Time, and a game called Combat, which is actually a really fun game. It's just a tank, it's like a one-on-one tank combat game, where you shoot these pellets out of your tank and try and hit the other tank. But the cool thing is that you can actually ricochet your shots off the walls. So they set up these really cool, elaborately designed stages. I mean, they're not that elaborate. It's an Intellivision game. But, you know, they set up angles and corners so that you can try to ricochet your shots to hit your opponent with these really cool shots. And Poppop always really liked that. And he really liked Burger Time because they had layers of strategy to them. It wasn't just kind of like mindless shooting or just mindless running and jumping. You know, he had Mario as well, like Super Mario Brothers, but he really liked the games that made you think instead of just react. And that was why he ended up loving the original Zelda game. The very first one, guys, on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Legend of Zelda was Poppop's favorite game, hands down. And we played it for the first time together. We experienced it together. Oh, I am on fire. I am on fire, guys. Okay. We'll change direction. I don't want to get into Death Mountain, really. Let's see. We can head to the quarry, I suppose. Yeah. We ended up, I don't know how he got it, honestly. I don't know what made him buy it or how he ended up with the game, but I just really remember sitting down to play it with him for the first time and just kind of being in awe that we could go anywhere we wanted, do anything we wanted. It was so different from every other kind of game that we had ever played at the time. And I think we both just immediately fell in love with it, and we ended up playing it almost every Friday night for a long time. It took us so long to beat it. We didn't have guides back then. We didn't really have a lot of people we could talk to. I think we ended up getting my aunt into it also at one point, which was cool, because I do believe we actually ended up like conferring with her on certain things. I think we ended up calling her one time for help with like Dungeon 7, because we were so completely stuck on it. I think she actually ended up beating it faster than we did because she used a guide. Oh, we got flying guardians down there. I'm just looking for shrines, though. But yeah, it was the kind of thing, guys, where we just both fell in love with it, and we bonded over the game, honestly, because we played it so much. Even after we beat it the first time, We found out there was a second quest in there, which was incredible. If you guys don't know about it, once you beat the original Legend of Zelda, you get access to a second quest where they just kind of remix everything. Ow. Mainly like the locations of the dungeons and items. The overworld's like exactly the same, but the secrets are different. As far as like the places that you can open up and interact with, and the places where you find certain things. So there was a lot of replayability there, and we just played it so much. We memorized everything in that game. Poppop was more concerned with the dungeons and finding secrets like that. He let me handle the combat most of the time. And I do recall that one of the hardest things to find in that game was the blue ring in the second quest. It was like the last item that we couldn't find. We had no freaking clue where it was. And Poppop actually started playing the game on his own with the sole mission of just figuring out where that blue ring was. I have got myself into some trouble here, guys. Tell you what, I'm gonna go ahead and teleport somewhere else. Let's see. Unexplored land, here we go. Trilby Valley, that's where we want to go. Let me drop that right there. And then we will teleport. But yeah, the blue ring, guys. It was the last item in The Legend of Zelda that we absolutely could not find, and Poppop made it his mission to find that item. And he started playing by himself, and it took him, I don't even know how many hours, but eventually he finally did find it all on his own, and he figured out that what you have to do is actually walk through a cliff wall at a very certain point in the game, and it gives you access to an area that you can't access otherwise. And to this day, I don't know how the hell he found it, because, there's nothing there indicating that you can walk through that wall. There's no direction whatsoever. It looks like every other spot in the game, but you can just walk right the hell through it. And Poppop figured that out all on his own. Just from, kind of thinking outside the box and working really hard. And just perseverance. And I think that really informed the way that I tend to play video games today. I mean, if you guys have been watching my videos for a long time, you know that that's kind of how I get through stuff too. I really, really enjoy the process of figuring things out on my own. I hate being told how to solve things. And a lot of that comes from Poppop. I can't deny it. What is going on here? Oh, Silver Bokoblin. That's cool. And is that a Yika guy over there? No. You know, I remember one time when I was playing ESPN Baseball Tonight for the Sega Genesis. This was a couple years later, after we had been through Zelda and all that good stuff. I was playing this baseball game on the Genesis, and I got so good at that game that it wasn't even a challenge anymore. I was beating the computer something like 32-0 or something like that. And Poppop just kind of walked by and saw the score on the game, and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm playing this game." And he's like, "Yeah, but why? You're crushing the computer opponent. Like, what's the point of this?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm just playing the game. I'm just killing time." And he's like, "This is stupid." He's like, "It's not challenging you at all. You know, you're not even thinking while you're doing this. You're just going through the motions." And I was like, "Yeah, but I mean, I like this game." And he's like, "Whatever, you can like what you like, but at least in Zelda, you have to think." And he walked away. And at the time, I was like, well, he's being kind of a douche, you know? Like, who cares? I'm just enjoying the game. But as I thought about it more and more as the years went on, and honestly, I think he was right. I think he had a really good point back then about, just kind of wasting time with repetitive games that don't make you think. And I don't think that that's true of most games. ESPN Baseball Tonight was a fun game. I enjoyed playing it. But after I had mastered it and it wasn't a challenge anymore, I was really just kind of wasting my time, you know? It's just kind of it's like masturbating. You know, it's like, what are you doing after a certain point? It wasn't really offering anything to me. And he recognized that right away. And just kind of pointed it out to me. But yeah, Legend of Zelda, guys. We bonded so hard over that game. And just to kind of like finish out the information about our Friday night ritual, we would play Zelda until a certain time, and that time kind of changed depending on like what else we had going on. We kind of fell in love with this TV show called Briscoe County Jr., which I know I've mentioned in this Let's Play before because of Comet the horse. Poppop was the one who really got me into that show because he loved Westerns. And I don't really like Westerns all that much myself, but Poppop was a huge Western fan. It was those were the movies he grew up watching when he was a kid, and he just loved them. So we checked out Briscoe County Jr., and I think because that game had, like, sci-fi elements, too. Not that game, that TV show. I think since that TV show had sci-fi elements as well, that's what kind of got me into it. It kind of had something that we both could love. And to this day, I still love that show. And I watch it all the time. And then later on, once that show was done, we started watching Hercules and Xena. Which, there's probably mixed opinions on from you guys. I know that they're not the most popular shows in the world. I think that there are good things about them, for sure. I still love them, even if I can recognize the flaws. You know, me and Pop-Pop watch those shows all the time. That show had Bruce Campbell in it, too. Hercules and Xena and and Briscoe County Jr. They all starred Bruce Campbell, and I think that's kind of what started my love for Bruce Campbell. It's just one of the many things that Pop-Pop gave to me, you know? And then, like, once those shows were over, we would sometimes go back and play a little more Zelda, but by then it was pretty late at night, and my mom would show up to pick me up when she was done with bingo, and it would kind of complete the tradition. I do remember one time we were so engrossed in Zelda that we didn't want to stop playing, and my mom had come to pick me up, and she was just kind of sitting there waiting for us to finish playing the game. And at one point, she got bored and actually started watching us. And, yeah, so, like, in that particular game that night, for some reason we were finding a lot of fairies, but our hearts were full. We kept finding fairies when we had full hearts, and fairies were kind of rare in that game. And we kept finding them. And at one point, my mom just kind of made some observation. She said, like, it's too bad you can't, like, store them for later. And we were kind of like, oh yeah, that's a really good idea, Mom. And, lo and behold, just 2 games later, in A Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo, you could store the fairies for later. I think that was the game that introduced, like, putting them in bottles and taking them with you. You may have been able to do that in the second NES game, too. I'm actually not sure. But that always just kind of stuck with me, how funny that was, that my mom just kind of made that observation, and lo and behold, it became true. And, yeah, I think that's most of what I have to say, guys. I think that's most of what I wanted to talk about, guys. I do have one other story that kind of popped into mind that I wanted to mention. I guess because it kind of relates to Zelda. Not so much in this game, but in a lot of Zelda games, they all have, like, grass that you can cut. I guess you can cut grass in this game, it's just not nearly as big of a mechanic. But a lot of times in a lot of Zelda games... Oh wow, this is doing damage to my sword. Are you kidding me? Just cutting the grass does damage to your sword. That's funny. Yeah, guys, at a certain point, we actually moved in with my grandparents because financially it was just too difficult for my mom. And Pop-Pop decided, well, until you guys are back on your feet, you guys can move in and live with us. And that was how he was kind of my grandfather and my father at the same time, you know? He did grandfatherly stuff like the Friday night tradition, but he also did fatherly stuff like looking out for us financially and taking care of us when we were down on our luck. Even though it was something he really didn't have to do. You know, he did it without hesitation because he was just that kind of guy. And while I was living there, one of my responsibilities was to mow the lawn, which I didn't really like doing back then. And there was this one spot in our lawn where we had this patch of grass underneath this pine tree. And I really hated mowing that spot, and I ended up, like, missing it all the time. Just that one patch of grass under that pine tree. And Poppop would always tell me, hey, make sure you get that patch of grass. Don't just skip over it. You gotta cut that patch of grass. And I was like, okay, yeah, I get it. I'll do it. And sometimes I got it, but most of the times I still ended up missing it. And after, like, the third or fourth time I missed it, Poppop got a little pissed off. And he came in while I was watching Batman the Animated Series. I specifically remember that I was watching that show, because I was so pissed off that he interrupted it. He came in and he was like, hey, you missed that patch of grass again, so come outside with me right now. And I was like, oh man, come on, Pop, I'm trying to watch Batman. And he was like, nope, you need to come outside right now. He took me outside, and he gave me a pair of, like, handheld shearers, right? Like, kind of like weed cutting shearers. And he handed them to me, and he said, since you don't want to cut this grass with the lawnmower, why don't you get down and cut it by hand? And at the time, I was like, man, what an asshole. Like, come on, man, this isn't fair, you know? He made me get down and cut that grass by hand, and he stood there and watched me do it until it was all done. And, like I said at the time, I was like, man, he's kind of being a dick. Years later, I realized that... Alright, leave me alone. Leave me alone, please. Years later, I realized that I had kind of developed this, I guess you could call it like a tick. No, that's not the right word. I had developed this sort of compulsion anytime I was cutting grass, or any kind of, like, task, really, like vacuuming the floor, or wiping up a spill, or cleaning up something that had spilled or something. I realized that I really, really went out of my way to make sure that every last square inch of whatever I was doing had been covered. And it was actually something that kind of bothered me when I didn't do it. Like, it was a compulsion. I still have it. Anytime I'm cutting the grass or, like, vacuuming the floor, I really have to make sure that every square inch has been hit. And I didn't realize it until years later, but I'm pretty sure it's because of that lesson that Poppop gave me. It was because he made me go out there and finish it by hand that I really, like, I developed this need to make sure that it was all done. And it's kind of amazing how he just kind of instilled that into me, you know? And he did it in a way that was so effective. I really don't know how the hell he did it. But he was really good at that kind of stuff, you know? He gave us a lot of life lessons. I wish that more of them had kind of sunk in. He was very good, like, financially. He was always, on top of his bills. He was on top of his savings. And that's one thing that, he definitely tried to instill into me. He definitely tried to instill into me. I wish it had sunk in a little more. That's more my fault than his. You know, he tried. But a lot of his lessons did sink in. And I'm just really glad he was in my life. I'm going to miss him a lot, but I'm really, really happy that he's not in pain anymore. And I'm really glad that he was a part of my life. And I'm lucky that he was part of my life for as long as he was, because I think a lot of people my age didn't have their grandparents for as long as I did. I'm 32 right now, and I know that a lot of my friends and people that I know my age lost their grandparents a long time ago, so I'm just trying to be really grateful for the amount of time that he was in my life, and I'm trying to remember the things that he taught me, and just try to be the best person I can be, you know? He's kind of the only reason that I know anything about being a man, is because of the lessons that he taught me. And he never stopped being a loving and compassionate person, even after we grew up. You know, he's the guy who co-signed my student loan so that I could get an education and enter the IT industry. You know, he backed me 100% on that, taking responsibility as a co-signer. And when I thanked him for it, he said, you know, hey, I just didn't want to be the one who stood in your way if this is something you really want to do. Which is kind of amazing, you know, that he saw it that way. And it really did help improve my life in a big way. I was in IT for a long time. I kind of fell out of it for a while due to a lot of circumstances. You guys know I worked at the nuclear plant for a long time. But I'm back in IT now, and I'm really trying to further that career. And I kind of feel more motivated now than ever because I know that Poppop supported me on that so much that I just want to keep going with it. I really want to make something of it, and I want to make him proud. And yeah, I don't really know what else to say, guys. There's a million different memories that I could talk to you about with Poppop. You know, most of them good. And I could just talk forever about the kind of person he was, but I can't record this forever, so hopefully you have a good idea of the kind of guy he was. I hope that you don't mind me taking this opportunity to just kind of memorialize him in this way. I think I kind of needed to do this, and it means a lot to me if you guys watched and listened. And I hope that if there's people that are important in your life, that you get to spend time with them and just cherish the time that you have. Because no matter how much you have with them, it's never going to be enough. Which is sort of a lesson we learned in Edith Finch recently. Kind of applicable, kind of funny how quickly this happened right after I finished that game. Life is funny sometimes, guys. Doesn't always make sense, but it's always interesting, I guess. So, thanks so much for watching this, guys. Please take care of yourselves. Please take care of each other. And, goodbye, Pop Pop.